Okay, so now I'm on Pickwick Papers doing my first Dickens novel in January 2019. If you're new to Dickens, don't start with Pickwick Papers, though that is where Dickens started. This is what really got his name on the map, as it were, in the English-speaking world. He was I think he was about 24 years old at the time. What had happened, he had been writing before. The book Sketches by Boz was a collection of kind of short stories, just walking around London doing little cityscapes and that kind of thing. So he was kind of known as a lively writer. He knew London very well. What happened was there was an illustrator, I think his name was Seymour, that was his last name, I'd have to look it up. Kind of a drunk, definitely in debt, needed to make money. So he approached these publishers, not his usual ones. I think he had already gotten all the other major publishers angry at him for a variety of reasons. He was not reliable due to his alcoholism. And he said, okay, I have an idea. I want to do some comic sketches of some, say, London men, some city men who go out and make asses of themselves trying to do country sports. Okay. And the publishers look to their shelf and, they see the name Boz. It's actually Charles Dickens, but that's the pseudonym he's going by. We have a likely young author who might be able to write some stories around these humorous pictures, and that's where it started. Dickens pushed back in negotiations, and he came up with some ideas of his own. And by the way, the illustrator didn't make it to the end of the project and was replaced. He died. I believe by suicide. Anyway, the idea that Dickens came up with is that he would put out, it wouldn't be some kind of picture book. He didn't really see much of a commercial venture there. He's in it to make money and to make a name for himself. What we'll do is we'll put out 3 chapters a month. This will be so much cheaper than trying to publish a book. Books were not really affordable to the middle class at the time. You would subscribe to a lending library. The books often were published in 2 or 3 volumes, and you would check out 1 volume at a time. So, for example, I think Jane Austen's Persuasion would have been a 2-volume, and her Pride and Prejudice would be a 3-volume book, I believe. The longer ones were 3 volumes and the shorter ones were 2 volumes. It was too expensive for anyone to really buy other than very rich people. So why not we do something that's more like a magazine? Use pulp paper, print out 3 chapters. It'll be a few shillings. People can afford that every month. And at the end of it, they will actually have paid more than if they had bought a book, but it's over, say, a 2-year period. That they're buying these chapters. Well, how are you sure that they're going to keep buying chapters? Aha, Dickens says, I will come up with some kind of, well, we call them cliffhangers now, but I'll introduce a new character or something will happen at the end of the 3rd chapter. Actually, he wasn't that crass, but it would usually be in the middle chapter there was something hanging, though there were a few times where he had the cliffhanger at the end of the installment. This, by the way, was such a moneymaker for Dickens and was such a good idea that basically in British literature, but beyond that, not only the Brits, it became a worldwide phenomenon in the 19th century. Before we had cheap paperback books, everyone was doing books this way. So think of like sitcoms versus binge watching series come out every week or whatever versus you get your whole series at once on Netflix or whatever. That's kind of gives you the idea of the evolution. Other authors were not nearly as slick as Dickens with regards to making this work. But because of this method of publication, and he really flogged it, because after it was all over, well, what if someone wanted to read it again? Now you had this stack of basically magazines, and they're kind of grubby, and they had ads on them. They did have ad wrappers and ad inserts, just like magazines. I want a nice display copy. So they sold some nice display copies. It was, we love it so much, I'm willing to pay, the fairly large amount. But evidently the salesmen who were selling the individual volumes came around buying up the old issues and then rebound them as commemorative editions or collector's editions. That was very, very funny. In any case, it's a very strange book. I'll talk about aspects of the book in future weeks. But this is really what started the Legend of Dickens. I don't think he actually achieved as much success with any other later book of all of the things that came off of it. Plays, joke books, all sorts of tchotchkes. A lot of it was unlicensed, as we would say now. I don't know what they would call it back then, unauthorized, and he didn't make money off of it. But it was a big business. Think Harry Potter. Think of what Harry Potter's like, and then think of this around Pickwick. Later I'll talk about how it's different from all the other novels of his, but also why many people liked it so much better than the others, though it's not so popular today.